Welcome to the Virtual CPA Success Show for creative agencies, the go-to resource for agency owners looking to scale their business. Join us every week to stay ahead of the curve and position your agency for future success.
By the way, how was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, it was.
Good.
We made some prime rib, and
there you go.
We actually got it at Costco, and so it was one of those things you just reheat. And so the funny part about it was that I had my dad and my brother and his wife, my sister-in-law there, and then my daughter, and of course April's there. And so we have this really cool prime rib. We had baked potatoes. We had corn and green beans and stuff like that. So I'm slicing it up. They take a bite. It's cold. The prime rib is like super cold.
Oh, no.
So I'm like, oh no. So we take it. I'm like, okay. So now we got to figure out how to microwave it. And so then they put the fork in the potato, and it's not cooked. It didn't cook in the crock pot like it was supposed to. So luckily we had scalloped potatoes, and so we fixed scalloped potatoes. And then of course the corn and the green beans was the simplest thing, right? You put it in the microwave. It's in those little bags. You put the temperature on, and boom, you take it out. It's hot. It was like ice cold. So it was like everything we had was like, what the heck's going on? So we took everything, put them on plates, put them in the microwave for a minute, and then everybody we served it for everyone. So it's kind of funny that we had this really cool thing going on, and nothing was going as well as it's supposed to go, and we had a great time.
Well, that's kind of the point of the holidays, right? Is you just sort of go with it and go with the flow. And if it doesn't work out according to plan, that's okay, because what's important is who you're around and who you're doing with. And that's a pretty good theme, I think, for today's episode with our friend Coach Bob, where the thing that I pick up from the episode, Jody, is that what's really important in this, as you're, whether you're a seasoned business professional or whether you're just getting started, finding, in my opinion, the right group of people who are going to help you and allow you to be the best version of yourself is the most important decision that you can make. And I think about a lot in my career in terms of in my mid to late 20s when I was just kind of figuring it out, and just how different it is now in my mid 30s, where I'm able to work with you and Adam and the team here and feel a little bit more self-actualized. And I think that's when I listen to you and Coach Bob talk about being visionaries, there's a lot that everybody can pull from that conversation in terms of figuring out what your next step is and what you want for yourself and what you want for your employees, and how to create an environment where your employees can be happy and the whole system works.
They get it right on the head. I'm looking. It was one of the better episodes that we've had in a long time. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope everybody here gets a lot out of it, because there's a lot to be gotten.
And I want to make sure that we mention it in the intro as well. www.imatter.com is the website. I went there before a couple days ago when I saw the recording on the calendar just to figure it out. And there was a really neat kind of self-assessment tool to kind of help you figure out where you are on that journey of figuring it out. And I'd encourage everybody who listens to the show to hop on the website, take the assessment, and just sort of see where your score is. And then from there, you can start to figure out where the next steps for you need to be. And Coach Bob gives you a lot of resources to help with that. So I hope everybody enjoys the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Virtual CPA Success Show. I'm your host today, Joey Kinney, joined by Jody Grundon in his always present Hawaiian shirt. Jody, good to be with you today.
Yeah, you as well, Jamie. It's a relief not having Jamie on the show, Joey. So it's good to see you.
I tried to do my best Jamie impersonation there. Our guest today is Coach Bob. Coach Bob, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. I wear Hawaiian shirts 70% of the time, and I'm just making Jody look good today. But
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
To put a date on the date of recording here, I have included several Hawaiian shirts on my Christmas list this year, because I really need to fit in a little bit better on these podcasts with Jody, because he always.
Well, that's going to be one of our topics. So yeah, we'll get to that.
Coach Bob, for the audience, would you mind doing just a quick introduction and letting everybody know who you are and sort of, what you're doing with your time?
Sure. Thank you. So I went through life kind of going through the motions, looking to be successful, went to college, partied a lot, graduated, got a job. Okay,
Hmm.
fine. And probably at the 30-ish, I accomplished pretty much everything I set out to do. And I walked into my dream house. And I remember it was a Tuesday morning. It was sunny, feeling pretty good, and opened up the door and looked at the great room with the last piece of artwork on the wall and the couch that was really expensive that I wasn't allowed to sit on because it might wreck it or
Hmm.
spill on it.
Hmm.
And I got really sad. And we were going through exponential growth. I'm an entrepreneur. I had a distribution company that we were Inc. Magazine's 26th fastest growing company, and we were growing out of control. And so it was a combination of putting in a business operating system, and it allowed me to be a visionary. So to really kind of work on the business rather than in the business. And I realized I had to it was time for me to choose to work on my life and be me rather than doing things I should have been doing or
Hmm.
was supposed to do. So I hit the delete button and pretty much everything in my life and started fresh on really realizing what matters most, clarifying who I am and following my North Star. So really my why, what, and how in life. And so
Hmm.
with EOS is a business operating system. One of my best friends created it. I was one of his first clients. It changed my life to figure out a process for business. And I used to avoid processes and realize that if there's processes around what and who matters most, there's opportunity to be spontaneous and intuition and the magic within it. And so as I learned that with business, my wife and I realized, well, what about for my life?
Hmm.
I'm a visionary, so I'm kind of all over the place, which I like
Hmm.
and I'm proud of. And yet often that I hit the ceiling of complexity either in business or in life. And so we created a thing called iMatter, which is a life operating system. So I'm here as I'm Coach Bob. I've been known as Coach Bob since my kids were born, coaching them in a lot of different softball, baseball, football, all those things. And even a lot of the parents would call me Coach Bob because I love to just cheerlead and help
Hmm.
people to reach their potential. So it's, in life, I'm a walking example of not being perfect, but figuring out my why, what, and how, and sharing it and helping others to do the same, and just being human and really tapping in and experiencing love and working through the pain, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So I mainly work with visionary entrepreneurs and their leadership teams, and then also visionaries on an individual basis as well.
Well, I think it's as and Jody, I think I can correctly identify you as the visionary as well, which makes a lot of sense about
Yeah.
why the two of you seem to get along so well. As as the non-visionary on the call
Yep.
here, what is what makes you a visionary, and what about that when you were in your early 30s was the kind of the driving force, not just to because I really love this idea of being a visionary of your own life. It's something my wife and I in our mid 30s are trying to solve, and we're really struggling with it because
Yep.
we're not visionaries.
iMatter.com. We'll talk about that. Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's a how did you start that process of like trying to figure that out if you're someone like me who's not a visionary and struggles with creating that path?
Well, a couple things. One is I met my wife 27 years ago. We got married 24 years ago, and I was a hard driving doer in
Hmm.
business and
Hmm.
a bit of a workaholic. And as Dr. Doug Brackman writes in Driven, there's about 8% of us that have a different gene that we're just driven and we're busy and we want to be productive. And a lot of it's based on imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to prove that I have, Jody, tell me I'm
Mhm.
amazing. Look at what I've done. And my wife, they hug me and say I'm amazing. And so, realizing that and then my wife saying, well, that's not what it's all about. It's about being. And so when we first met, and I had, again, hit the delete button in the previous areas of my life, and we moved to Colorado and tapped into the mountain and the spirit of the mountain and the whole be, do, have concept. So instead of, doing these things and then, to then, so be, do, have, so to have these things, then to do these things, then I'll be happy.
Mhm.
We realize to be in the moment and be present and be tapped in and be support for you then the natural progression and the universal law is that then I start to do the things that I love and I'm great, and I start to have the things that I desire. And so my wife and I kind of figured that out. We were kind of out in the mountains for a couple of years, kind of recreating our life. It was amazing. And then fast forward a little bit, and I recreated a lot of that same shit that got in the way. And I realized that when I'm stressed, I have a hard time being. So then we created iMatter, which is our life operating system. You know, a big fan of operating systems, which isn't typical for most visionaries. But if I can do it in business, I can do it in life. So my wife and I created iMatter, and that's Unscatter the Chatter is the name of the book. And there's a lot of chatter coming in from the outside that I need to be like you, and I should be wearing a Hawaiian shirt every day. And wait a minute, Jody has more money, and I'm a failure, to what really matters most. And I can always think. So we have tools and principles and practices in our book, and we have training tools and videos and whatnot. And there's thousands of life operating systems out there. I happen to like ours because we wrote it. But it helped me to figure out my why, what, and how, and not to be doing things because I think you want me to do something which may not be who I am, or I need to be like Jody and tell him what he wants to hear so he'll like me. It's, learning to act like I matter, be who I am, and work through the pain in life. And that's the learning opportunity. And so long-winded, it's, pick, we say in business, pick an operating system. In life, pick an operating system. And so we have one, and then to create a group where you can share. So first of all, to create it with your wife or your partner, whatever it might be. And, it's like, I'm like, well, here's our core values. And Cheryl, my wife, is like, well, no, those are yours. Okay, well, what are our core values? What's our why? And so we spend a lot of time on that. And, we talk about self-mastery is, our definition is commitment, clarity, and confidence. So commitment, that I'm looking to learn and grow who I am, who we are as a couple, who we are as a family, who we are as a business. And then to have, so the commitment to that. So spending time asking myself questions, sharing, slowing down with my wife. And so we literally came up with a plan, which is a little bit, though that's so structured, yet otherwise I hit the ceiling of complexity in my life. So for us to think about those things, act on the things that matter most, and then I be, do, have. So the stressful situations are actually the most beneficial learning opportunities. And then the last thing we talk about right now is, to imagine a great future. So I'm looking forward to the future. So what do you, hey, when I'm 60, here's what I'd like to have. Okay, cool. And what about with your wife? And then to kind of, well, what does that look like in 3 years, in 1 year? And what can I do today to get there? And ultimately, to be committed to that. So I'm thinking about those things, and I'm acting on the most important things, and then being in the moment. It all kind of works. It's magical. And we're in a different time in the world right now. I mean, it used to be a very 3D linear world. It's changed, and I'm loving it. And so to, be able to slow down and hear the messages from above, or here, or from the two of you, that's how we learn and grow and connect and collaborate and have a great time.
Yeah, Coach Bob, I could listen to you probably talk all for the entire episode and really get a lot.
I like to talk. No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, visionaries, we definitely like to talk, especially about what we do and stuff. And Joey, kind of adding to that with me, when I realized that, well, I didn't realize I was a visionary for a long time. I didn't even know that was even a term. I didn't know what that even was. And so I was a doer initially. So I worked in a couple of public accounting firms beforehand, working the hours, grinding away, never feeling that I was super fulfilled. It was like, wow, this kind of sucks. I didn't like it.
Right.
I was good at it, but I didn't like it. And it was like, wow, I can't imagine doing this for another 40 years. I mean, that just wasn't something I thought. And I thought, maybe it's the profession. And so I love public accounting, went to the corporate world and thought, hey, this is probably more my pace. It's slower, but then I mastered it so quickly, and it was like, wow, now it's boring. And it was like, wow, now what did I just do? I kicked myself in the butt because I've got this great accounting degree, and I don't like either way. I don't like the jobs that are out there. And it wasn't until I thought, what, let's create something that is different, that I do like, that I do enjoy. And with that, that's when we started Summit. Summit was founded upon that idea that, hey, we're going to do something completely different than public accounting and corporate. We're going to combine the two and see what happens.
Love
The
it.
best of both worlds. That type of thing. And then once I started doing that, getting in that, I realized, man, here now I'm a doer again. I'm a doer in my own company, and I had to kind of get out of that and separate that out and really learn how to delegate, really learn how to, not abdicate responsibilities. So that's never good, but to delegate it, create processes that you can actually, review and make sure that they're right and improve on, and constantly realize that, hey, just because I'm really good at something doesn't mean the person that is going to fill that mold here in the next month or 2 months or year is going to be equally as good and understand exactly what I did. And what I mean by that is that, I would go into, we created this weekly cadence. We created a monthly cadence with clients, going through their CFO stuff. I could come into any meeting unprepared, ask questions. The client would love it. We would get a lot out of it. And it'd be a really great, high five when we had never coming with a silver bullet in any meeting, never really doing a ton of background stuff going into that meeting. It was just natural for me. And with that, we hired our first CFO, which was Jake, and Jake, it wasn't natural for him. And so it was like, wow, what's wrong with Jake? Why can't Jake do that? And so it was one of those things that we had to then, get the processes set up so that, there is set meeting cadences. Here's what you talk about in the meetings. Here's when you talk about it, and just kind of get, about 80% of it processed and 20% of it, that's the old saying, snowflakey, where he can kind of ad lib and create himself. And that really was an eye opener for me, that, not everybody's like me, and I just assumed everybody was like that.
Right.
I assumed everybody was the person that didn't want to be the doer. And that was a wrong thing to assume, because, I think there's maybe, I don't know what the percentage is. There's probably 20% are in that visionary mode, I'm guessing.
I've heard 8, but yeah, it's not half. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, real small amount. Yeah. And so that's kind of where that led to, all the way to the point now we merged with another accounting firm, grew it to where we wanted to be, at the $10 million mark, 50 people stateside, another 15 offshore, near shore. And then we added, now we're part of a bigger company. Now I'm back in the role of not the entrepreneur anymore. I'm kind of the doer again in a bigger organization. But given the freedom to be kind of that entrepreneur, giving a lot of freedom is really important for entrepreneurs or visionaries. They got to have freedom, otherwise, they won't survive, in my opinion. And so now that's kind of the second stage. And the second stage is, hey, over these next 5-10 years, how can we grow this, and how can I enjoy this process, of building something, much bigger than what I could, all by myself. And so that's kind of my journey there, Coach Bob, and the kind of a long-winded answer to your question, Joey.
Well, I think there's a couple things.
Can I add one thing,
Oh,
Joey?
please do.
Yeah, I didn't finish my one thought. Sorry, then I'll be quiet for a second. So I talked about imagining this great future. So my conscious and unconscious and subconscious is thinking about, oh my gosh, what is that going to look like? And so then I'm starting to share that, and then I'm not worried about it, because wow, the future looks bright. Then I don't regret the past. I'm learning, so I'm improving on the past. Then I'm implementing a system like an iMatter, so I can impact this moment right now. And so, my kids are 22 and 18, and I wouldn't call them visionaries. And so again, I don't only want to work with visionaries. I want to help to be a walking example of, it's okay to have vision. It's okay to dream. It's okay to make mistakes. I mean, that's all part of it, and that's how we learn. So, to come back to your question, it's not just for visionaries. So my daughter wanted to go to the University of Michigan, be in the marching band, and be an engineer. And she's 3 years in, and she's like, I want to help kids know they matter. She switched to elementary education, and that's not what she should have done. And I was kind of like, oh my God, you could go make all this money and suffer through the next couple of years and then figure out what you want to do. And she's like, this makes me happy. And I'm looking at my book going, oh, practice what you preach. And so she avoided a midlife crisis. And then my son is a very good baseball player, saying, I want to go somewhere warm and fun and play baseball and maybe go to class once in a while, to then realizing, okay, education, and connections might be an answer, and a school where he can play competitive baseball and do it. And so he gets an offer from Princeton, and he's realizing, okay, maybe that matters most. And so they're having visions of their lives and sharing it with us. And I don't have all the answers, but then they're like, all right, what's it going to take to get there? My son's got to go work out and get his speed down to this. And sure enough, he achieved what he went to go do. So it can be for anyone. It's not just for visionaries.
Well, and
Bob, how do you recognize a visionary? I mean, you mentioned both your kids may or may not be that. I was wondering about that stuff with my kids. They're both young. They're both out there exploring the world. How do you pick that up? I guess because I didn't know myself.
I appreciate that. It's fun because I think we're going to go this whole time, Jody, and not let Joey speak.
Do it. Do it.
It's basically someone who believes there's more, believes that that we'd like to dream. We're coming up with ideas, and Gino Wickman, the creator of EOS, has done studies, and he feels about 5% of the people are visionaries and integrators. And Dr. Doug Brackman, who I mentioned earlier, thinks about 8% of us are visionaries. So it's kind of that scattered. That's one of the reasons we came up with the name of our book, because that's a way to describe a lot of visionaries. Is like, and I struggled in school because I'm not necessarily a rule follower. I'm not good at the doing of things. And in Colby, we talk about a high quick start, and so it's inspiration, energy, big problem solver. It is not great at follow through are some of the typical things. And again, I once I became a visionary, I started to use it as an excuse to say, well, I don't have to do that because I'm a visionary. Well, I still need to change the diaper, and I still need to pick up milk on the way home. So it's not an excuse, but it's so. And again, it doesn't matter if I don't want to label people. And that's where, and you started the show, Joey, to say you have to have vision for your life. That's what we're talking about. So it's rather than labeling it, again, they may or may not be visionaries, but they are committed to figuring out like who are they and why are they here and what do they want to do and how do they want to be remembered.
Well, there's something that I love about both of your answers. That's kind of the throughput there from my perspective is you both have reached a level of self-actualization that I think is admirable. I mean, I was sitting there listening to both of you talk, and I was like, well, there's year 3 of therapy right there, getting to the point of saying like, well, what is really important to me? And I think especially for younger generations, mine in particular, with kind of that crew that was graduating high school from like 1995 to 2010, 2015,
right?
There was a very marked change in how we viewed things like going to college and these types of things, where when I graduated in 2006, it's not, are you going? It's where are you going? And not only where are you going, did you get the scores to get there? So a lot of us in my generation are really struggling with, well, this is what I was told to do. I was told you do exactly what you did, Coach Bob, which is exactly what I did. You go to college, you grind until you can't grind anymore. And then you look around and say, like, where did the last 20 years of my life go? And that's something when I think about the audience that we talk to on our sister podcast, the Young CPA Success Show, is trying to get them to learn from these lessons that we've learned and say, hey, no, don't do that. Take the approach that your kids are doing and say, what are the things that are going to make me happy and fulfilled, and avoid the midlife crisis that my wife and I are going through in our mid-30s.
No, I agree. And it's a great time to be alive. I know there's a lot of divisiveness and anger and fear. And to me, I call this the wisdom age. And a lot of people are like, well, there's not a lot of wise things happening out there. But as Jim Collins talks about in Good to Great, the enemy of great is good. And we had it really good in society. And now it's not so good in a lot of ways. And now people are saying, well, we need to change, but I don't want to go to good. I want to go to great. And that's where there's a lot of visionaries who are kind of figuring stuff out. And we're the walking example and inspiring the people around us to say, and I did a blog the other day called it Life is Just a Game, and as Prince says in the controversy song, is life is just a game. Do you want to play? We get so stressed out and worried and regretting. And so and in the future, in the past. So let's be present. And that to me is where now 8% of us are that way, and then 9, 10, 11, and that swings society over to say, you know what, I do want to be collaborative, and I don't want to be separate, and I don't want to be afraid to live. And that's where a lot of us visionaries, and that's another way to kind of find out, is we jump and we would rather beg for forgiveness than ask permission.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, so I learned, and some people are, oh my gosh, we screwed up. It's like, all right, what did we learn from? And so even in, picking your job or your career, or hopefully knowing, I mentioned I was previously married, I had no idea who I was. And I thought I wanted the season tickets and that great house, and you do this. And I got there and like, that's not what it was. And it wasn't her fault. I didn't know who I was. So then as I met Cheryl and I really started to know more who I am, and our hobby is personal growth, relationship growth, and spiritual growth. And that's a lot of what iMatter is. And so we're pushing and pulling, and believe me, it's not always pretty and fun when she'll be a mirror and say, here's what I see. And I'm like, well, screw that. What are we doing? And so, but she just wants the best for me, and we're mirrors for each other. And that's where Dr. Bill Isaacs says, he wrote a book called Dialogue, and he talks about the art of learning together. So I may or may not convince you, but if it's a safe space, I can create a safe space for you to hear what you're thinking and get it out there, and a safe space to think. And I can be like, I never really thought about that. And as I get the chatter out of here and share it with you, I'm like, that's not really what I think. And that's how we evolve, and our society is evolving. It's a great time to be alive.
Okay, Jody, so I have a question for you. Thinking about the business world and our two audiences that we tend to target with our podcast, the folks who are owning, running, operating a business, probably using EOS or a similar type of operating system for their business, and our younger CPAs and other folks who are trying to kind of navigate the early years in their career. As someone who's a visionary, how do you work with somebody who's maybe in my role, who is in that doer role, and maybe wants more for their life out of that? Because right now, that doer person in the role is in the business, in the grind, doing the work. And I think as a business owner, we would love to keep our good people. So how do we create a space for those individuals in the business to rise and self-actualize and not lose them as an asset to the company in the future?
Yeah, great question. And that's something I kind of struggled with when I first created Summit, because the reason that I left public accounting wasn't because I didn't enjoy the work, because I did. I enjoyed going back and forth, working with 20 different companies at one time, helping them out in different areas. What I didn't enjoy was 80 hours a week. 80 hours a week, tracking time, and all those things that, and charging time, all that kind of stuff, that it just really wasn't it. And in the corporate world, what I did like about it is it was process oriented. I worked for a $250 million manufacturing company, super process oriented. You had to do X, Y, Z. I got it. I understood it, but then it was, it was just too slow for me. And so when I created Summit, the idea was that I wanted to create something that Joey, you would enjoy working for. It wasn't me enjoy working for, because I'm working for myself. That's the fun part. For me to succeed is to grow to a certain level, have high satisfaction. My wife and my wife, my kids, everything. But for me, it was, hey, how can I get it so that you would come into an environment that you enjoy working for? We're working with a company, and we've always said that, hey, we're company first, we're people first, we're people first, we're people first. Well, what does people first mean? Well, it means that when we do things, we do it based on, every process we have, we think about the people and how that impacts them. So, do we say, hey, you're required to work, 60, 70, 80 hours a week? No, absolutely not. I actually frown upon that. If you're working that many hours, you're doing something wrong. We need to figure it out and help you out. So it's contrary to a traditional public accounting firm. A traditional public accounting firm, you just continue to work. You don't look to innovate. You just continue to work, and you build upon mistakes, on mistakes, because that's how you get your money back. With the way that we structured ours, is that I'm going to force you, the doer, to think outside the box. I don't want you doing something day by day the same way, because you've done it forever that way. I want you to look for different ways and start using that creative mindset that you have in your head, in order to get that 20-hour a week task I just gave you into 5-hour a week task or a 2-hour a week task that can be repeated over and over again. And so the idea was that I didn't want to put robots in places. I wanted to create an environment where it allowed you to be an innovator within that environment to keep your creative juices flowing.
Mhm.
Because again, that mundane thing wasn't fulfilling for me, and I knew it wasn't fulfilling for a lot of folks. And it was one of those things I had to create something different, have a different experience. And employee first or people first doesn't mean that, hey, you get everything in the world. That's not what we mean by that. It just means that the focus is on you to make sure that you are happy within what you're doing and actually are productive in that process. And so that then the second stage is that how do I convey that message or that idea that's in my head to you? Because that message with me, it's in the head, it's going around and around. I'm thinking about it day and night. Believe me, when a visionary has a hard time turning it off when they get at night, and I'm thinking of it. Yeah, I sleep on it. I wake up thinking about it. It's just a constant thing in my head that's continuously going. And so a lot of times I forget that I didn't tell you because I've thought about it a bazillion times. I've thought about it. I've reenacted it in my head. I've, really, to me, it's the world's problems are solved because I just did it in my head. And so what I have to do is I have to consciously remember that, hey, I've got to break this down so it doesn't scare you, the person that doesn't like change, the person that's afraid to take risks, that sort of thing. I have to break it down and explain that why to you even more so than what it would take to convince me. And so that's the biggest thing or the biggest challenge that I, as a visionary, have is explaining that why and making sure that why is so crystal clear that you will then follow me on our venture together to create this, this bigger than better, company.
Coach Bob, what are your thoughts on that?
Echoing a lot of what Jody said, and again, to have a business system like an EOS and to know your core values, and then we talk about right people, right seat, but also it is the why, what, and how of the business, and how does it align with me, the visionary. So so if the culture is me, and a big part of one of our jobs is to be that energy and that vibe, and to be walking the talk, and so to be clear on expectations. I used to not want to delegate because I'm like, why do I give this to Joey? This sucks to do Excel worksheets. And Joey's like, I love it and I'm great at it. So to really define, what are you great and love at? And Dan Sullivan calls it unique ability. At iMatter, we call it great gift. So Jody, what's your great gift? What do you love to do and what are you great at? What gives you energy? And so it usually starts with the leader. So as I started to figure it out, and then my team protected me around the why, what, and how. And then we started to figure out, okay, what seats do we need? So if you're, excited about our why and we're clear on it, then that is, that's what really drives people and inspires people is the why, not just that we are a great distribution company. Our culture was called the bare necessities, and we had fun with it. We were a polar bear, and that represented who we are. We were almost extinct, but we were cute and cuddly, and we were ferocious in a lot of ways. And people really rallied around that. And so when I started to delegate to people that were better at things that I liked, and I gave them permission, we have a thing called the 6 Habits of a Great Effing Visionary. And so it's like not only for me, but how people can get the most out of me. And that was a huge shift. So when I took a couple months off and came back and I'm like, hey, I'm back and I'm ready to go. They're like, we're glad you're back. We don't want you doing the stuff that you were maybe even good at, but didn't like, but especially things you're not good at and don't like. But I felt guilty. So to get rid of that guilt and to ask, to say, Joey, what do you think? And to trust. I've got with one of my companies, a few of our clients are saying, we want to improve this. So when can we have a meeting, Bob? And I'm like, you know what? I trust you. You guys have a meeting and present to what you want to do. And I'm like, I love it. I don't have all the answers. I'll answer things if there's not a suggestion. But so, yeah, our job is to make sure that we're sharing that why and walking the talk and trusting people. If you want something done, ask a busy person or a productive person because they'll figure it out. And it's like, dude, and so I'm like, well, I don't want to burden Joey with this. Like, Joey, you're great at this. What do you think? And all right, can you take that on? Oh my gosh, he's trusting. And then, you're trusted, and then you're going to elevate. And we would lose some good people if it wasn't a perfect fit. But while they were there, they made a huge difference, and they would come back, if they wanted it. So it's just, I think culture is key. The why, the life of the leader. And so if I'm confused on that, and it's a confusing message, it's just a job. To me, there's a job, a career, and I call it a craft. And a craft is something that I'm learning and teaching. And so, and I'm being, open and honest and vulnerable with my employees, with my clients, with my vendors. I'm not perfect. I'm learning every day. And so that inspires some people and it doesn't others. And that's okay. And it's okay if you don't like working here. But if you are, let's kick ass, man. And so to be really open and honest is a big key.
Well, and the open and honesty leads to trust, which is, I think, the thing that's hardest for younger generations or folks who are working their way up in the organization is to feel the trust. And Jody, that's where
I think for most people. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think Jody, that's where you and Adam did a really lovely job of building Summit. Is, I feel very confident that if I needed to make a career change for family or for whatever reason, if I went to Jody and said, "Hey, the onboarding CFO role is great, but I need to be, doing this or, making this amount of money or whatever it happens to be." If I'm proactive in that conversation, I trust that Jody is going to do whatever he can to make it happen. And that is how you self-actualize as an organization and as individuals within that. So I love the open and honesty because that's key.
Yep. And we talk about in our book, we have 7 lifetime expanders. And the first is to create and use great relationships. So I'm practicing with you on how to have a great relationship. And we call it the rules of engagement. And it's, being aware of our verbiage and creating a safe space. And so then as I'm practicing with you, then when I have a more volatile relationship or a more intimate relationship with my spouse, my kids, a client, whatever it might be, I'm learning how to create that safe space to ultimately, and here's the answer to the first question you asked, Joey, is to improve the greatest relationship of my life, which is with myself. And that's to shift the language in here, because it's the ego is trying to protect ourselves to say, if I'm vulnerable with Joey, he may not like me or he may make fun of me. And so I'm not going to commit. But if I'm, speaking, being open and honest and allowing you to speak and to truly respect you and be present, people are like, wow, this is, no one's ever really taken me serious. I feel seen and I feel heard. And that takes even the productive people. I feel like the good productive employees are about 60% as effective as they could be. When I trust them and empower them and they go to 80 or 90, that's amazing. And you get rid of the ones who are 20 or 30 who don't want to learn and grow.
Right.
Well, before we wrap up with our fun question, I want to make sure that everybody knows where to not only find out more about you, Coach Bob, but also find links to the book. And I did take the assessment that is on the website. We didn't get to that today, but there is an assessment there that I took that I found very interesting and enlightening. So Coach Bob, where can we find out more about you and iMatter?
Yeah, so iMatter.com, and iMatter is, it may sound selfish, and I like kind of that double-edged, wording and whatnot. And so, yeah, it might seem selfish, but it's kind of like the oxygen mask. The more I act like I matter and take care of myself, not in a, in a disruptive way, but when I'm healthy and I'm present, I can help more people. And so, and then that's been the key. So iMatter.com, and that's where you can get our books. We have a self-study tool. There's some free videos out there. And so much of it is about just unscattering the chatter. And we've had so many people that are like, just by being a part of that conversation up there and shifting it from MI to IM is huge. So iMatter is for iMatter and also for IM. So iMatter.com, check it out. And we're excited to create and have great conversations.
Well, speaking of taking care of yourself, you've got a lovely pillow above your right shoulder that says "Go to the mountains," and that happens to be when I need to unplug and recharge. I go to the mountains, and so I wanted to hear from you, Coach Bob, where your mountain is and what you enjoy most about it.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, physically, my wife and I moved to Boulder, and then so we would go up into the mountains from there. And we were in the foothills, and so we could walk and hike from there, which is amazing. And when I was on top of the mountain, I was above all the fray.
Mm-hmm.
And to think about the important things, not the urgent things. There's so many distractions, and the phone's going off and whatnot. That's the virus. This helps me, but it's distracting.
Yep.
So when I'm on top of the mountain and I could just look down, and it's the energy, and it's magical. And so I take people to the mountain, but it's not even just the mountain. It's a mantra and it's a mindset. So I've got a stone that I give to people. It's almost like an AA token or stone. So it's like, I'm stressed out and a client's unhappy.
Yeah.
And so I can freak out and be in urgent and fight or flight, and or slow down, take a deep breath. It's all going to be okay. And if I was on top of the mountain, how would I feel, and what would be my choice? And so it is we're running hard. We're on this rat race, and it's like, what is that for? So to slow down and listen. So the mountain is wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
We also own a domain called A Place to Be. And we used to think that was going to be just a physical place. So an organic cafe and wellness studio, which we'll get there. But it's really a place to be is wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than waiting until I go to the mountain, which believe me, going there, it's in my mind, it's in my heart, it's in my soul. I go off the grid for a couple days. I tap in. It's amazing. So, and there is literally a vortex around the mountains and the oceans, and it's a different energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so to take a break, and I live in Detroit. We don't have any mountains around here, but to get out and hear the water, take my dog for a walk with my wife and hear the water and just slow down, and everything's okay. Take a deep breath.
I love that. Jody, do you have a place that maybe is your mountain that you like to when you need to escape?
It's kind of funny because Coach Bob mentioned that it's not really not necessarily a destination. It's just simply the more so the journey there. And what I mean by that is that I enjoy going off the grid a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Where the phone's gone, just like you're saying. But it's not fulfilling for me unless I have my wife with me.
Right.
And so it's one of those things that everybody says, hey, you're traveling all over the place, you're vacationing. No, I'm speaking in hotels. They just happen to be in nice places. I'm eating at restaurants.
Just happen to be in nice places.
But you don't get to enjoy the nice place, because you're always, you always got to be 100% on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really be yourself. You have to really watch what you say, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
You've got, it's very emotionally draining at a certain point. And so I guess my point is, hey, being with my wife, being with my kids, somewhere where we can just kind of relax and enjoy each other's company, and maybe grill a hamburger or something like that on a grill versus going to a fancy steak restaurant.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, Coach Bob, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to learn more about you and read the book and dive in a little bit more to what the test results said about me and maybe where some of my growth opportunities are into the future. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Love it. I appreciate you, and I had fun, and however I can help, let me know.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website, summitcpa.net, to get more tips and strategy for achieving business success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.